You're saying you're not prepared now to
What
commit
I'm
to that
saying
principle.
is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time.
That's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him.
20 days before the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump held their final debate in Las Vegas. They tackled some of the issues we are still talking about today, like the peaceful transition of power, the Supreme Court, and the candidate's character. President Trump and Joe Biden have so far had just one debate. Their second face-off was scheduled for Thursday, but was canceled after President Trump refused to participate virtually. Both candidates are holding separate town halls instead. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett and Chief Congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes join me now. They covered the Trump and Clinton campaigns in 2016. That's a walk down memory lane, isn't it? Seems like ages ago. Major, let me start with you. At that final debate in 2016, Donald Trump refused to say if he would accept the outcome of the election if he does not win. Now, he's saying similar things now.
Right.
In these final weeks of the race, are there parallels between the campaign's messaging then in 2016 and now?
At the surface, but they're much deeper now and they're much more consequential. The equities are completely different, meaning the responsibilities of a sitting president are completely different than that of a challenger who's never run for public office before, as Donald Trump was in 2016. And he was essentially saying what he'd always said to the course of the campaign, something that was eye-catching, something that was unusual, something that was unconventional. All of that made him more attractive, but the equities of being a sitting president are completely different. And what he is essentially asserting now is the only way that he loses is that the election is rigged. That is a manifestly irresponsible thing for any sitting president to say, because you're not a challenger on the outside of the system. You are the system. You're at the top of the American political system. As the President of the United States, your responsibility, not from a partisan point of view, but from a governance point of view, is to reassure the American public about the mechanism by which it will cast their ballots and the mechanism by which they will be fairly and accurately counted and inspire confidence in that. If there are specific instances where you believe there is something awry, you can point to that, but making blanket statements about underlying fraudulency is manifestly irresponsible for a president, and it is one that, as you point out, Elaine, he has continued, but that does not in any way, shape, or form justify it.
Nancy, let me turn to you. Filling a seat on the Supreme Court was a significant issue for Republicans and conservatives in particular in the last election. You are now covering a confirmation hearing. Are Democrats approaching this issue differently compared to 2016?
Yes, I mean, I think Democrats are trying to make the case that, this is a hugely important issue, the Supreme Court, something that their voters have traditionally, according to the polls, not taken quite as seriously, not have put as much importance on as Republican voters. And Democrats say they're now paying the price. You've now had Donald Trump naming 2 individuals to the Supreme Court, and he is about to get, it looks like, a third confirmed, all because he was able to defeat Hillary Clinton in 2016. So the case that they're making to their voters is that you've got to care about this issue, and it does appear that their voters have woken up. If you look at the polls, Democrats tend to say now that they see the Supreme Court as a much more important issue, and that's partly because they have been warned by their elected officials that Roe versus Wade could be on the line, that Obamacare could be on the line, even gay rights. And so this has taken on a much more tangible importance to Democratic voters. And the fact that this confirmation is coming so close to the election, Democratic officials hope will drive some of their voters to the polls.
So, Nancy, the polls also show Joe Biden leading in a number of swing states, some of which President Trump won in 2016. How exactly are Democrats feeling right now about the state of the race?
You know, I think Democrats were so scarred in 2016 after that election when they thought that she was on a glide path to victory, only to have her defeated by Donald Trump, that Joe Biden could be winning now by 20 points and they still wouldn't believe it. And so they're very cautious. They don't want to send a signal to their voters that they have this in the bag because they think that that would depress turnout. And I think they also feel some pressure not just to be victorious, but to have a decisive victory, because they worry that if this is close, that groups and the Trump administration itself might file legal challenges that could tie this up and create a very murky situation for a long time. So Democrats, certainly they're heartened by the polls that they see, but they don't want to take anything for granted, and they know that it's possible that there are some Trump voters who aren't talking to pollsters, or that independents or people who say they're undecided could break the president's way, just like they did in 2016.
So, Major, let me turn to you to pick up on Nancy's point there. What about that idea that there may be supporters of President Trump who aren't telling pollsters that they are supporters of the president, or that there are people out there who are still trying to make up their mind? How is the Trump campaign feeling about that?
Well, here's one thing that the Trump campaign and the Biden campaign have in common. They are both running as if they're 6 points down. The Trump campaign because it is, and the Biden campaign fears that it is not as much ahead as the polls might indicate, and wants to run scared, to Nancy's point. No complacency. Run through the tape. So that's one thing they have in common. There are some fundamental structural differences in this race compared to 2016 that I'll get to in a second. But this question of the so-called shy or secret Trump voter. Elaine, I've spent a lot of time talking to pollsters and campaign operatives with both camps in the last couple of weeks, and they believe, A, that the shy, secret, hidden Trump voter does exist. They don't know by what percentage point. 1 percentage point, 2, maybe 3, but they do believe it exists. What I will tell you is the pollsters working for Biden's campaign are working much more aggressively to find them, to try to unearth them if at all possible. And here's another key difference, and Nancy will remember this from the 2016 campaign. Hillary Clinton stopped overnight tracking polling about October 3rd and let all the rest of the data work to the analytics side of her campaign. The Biden campaign will not do that. They'll have analytics side working all the way through Election Day, but there'll be overnight tracking of their polling all the way through October as well. That will be a fundamental data difference between these two campaigns. That will give them more insight into what voters are out there, what who may be undecided, and are there any secret or hidden Trump voters there. A couple of other structural differences. This is an incumbent referendum election. It's not an open seat election, which means President Trump is unlikely, if any of our history in presidential elections is a guide, to get late breakers. He got most of the late breakers in 2016 because he was an alternative in an open seat race talking about an anti-establishment message. He is the establishment now, unlikely to get late breakers. Besides that, the structural differences on 2 key points are vast. There's a much wider gender gap between men and women, and men are not nearly so pro-Trump as they were in 2016. Unless the Trump campaign can find a way in the closing days to counter those data sets, this is going to be a very tough campaign for the president to win.
All right, 20 days to go. Major Garrett and Nancy Cortez, so great to have your perspective. Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Sure.